The Tamron 17-70mm f2.8 is an APS-C lens for mirrorless cameras that was first introduced for Sony E-Mount, then Fuji, and is now available for both Nikon Z-Mount and Canon RF mount. I'm using it today on the Nikon Z8, which is a 45-megapixel full-frame camera, but I'm using it in APS-C mode, so we are still going to have nice 20-megapixel files to take a look at what this lens is capable of, including the positives and the downsides you need to consider while we're at our portrait photo shoot, where we have Asha modeling, Lydia's on makeup, and Dan is filming the behind the scenes. And I'll be talking about all the mount versions as there are a couple of differences between them.
And then I'm getting like just above your knees as well.
You might remember that I do actually have a video about the E-Mount version of this lens where I use the Sony A6600. I feel like I need an updated review for this lens because it's been 5 years since I uploaded that video. We also didn't have great weather on the day of that photo shoot, so we're going to be taking some fresh pictures today. As usual, I'll be sharing lots of unedited, straight out of camera images at 100% crop so you can see the true detail this lens produces. Afterwards, I'll share my edited version, which I chose to use my Wildphone Lightroom preset pack to edit with, which is linked down below. As always, thank you to Tamron for loaning me this lens. However, this review is not sponsored by them. They don't tell me what to say and I don't keep the lens.
Yeah, I like that with your shoulders a bit more towards me as well.
This 17-70 on APS-C gives you the full frame equivalent of 25 to 105mm, which is such a versatile focal range to have in one lens. So this can be used for a really wide range of photography styles, from landscapes to portraits to events and everyday shooting. This lens would be also suitable for video, which we will be taking a look at in today's review.
It's like we're in a whole forest. Oh, that's nice. Let me get like headshot. That's beautiful there. That looks really nice with your chin up a little bit because it like your face catches the light a bit more.
Because it has a constant f2.8 aperture all the way through to 70mm, you are able to get that nice background blur in your photos, which is great for portrait photography. Since this is an APS-C lens, it's not going to be as creamy as what you can get on full frame, but I was able to get some really nice separation in these photos. I especially love some of the close-ups I got at 70mm. The background just melts away, which is so beautiful.
And then would you mind sitting there as well? I feel like we've got a lot of like little foreground blurs that we can use.
For an everyday zoom lens covering such a wide focal range, I do think this lens produces pleasing images with a very nice level of sharpness, but there are still some optical compromises you should know about. The sharpness is pretty consistent throughout the entire focal range, but you'll see that it does occasionally miss focus. At 17mm, there is a bit of vignetting and quite a lot of lens distortion that will have to be fixed up in post, which is what I've done with my images. I made sure to turn on profile corrections in Lightroom to help remove the dark corners and adjust the distortion.
So get like a wide angle shot if you want to like have your legs, your feet out a little bit more. Yeah.
This 17-70 has 9 circular aperture blades and a minimum aperture of f22. While the bokeh looks super nice and round in the background, especially when you're shooting wide open, when you zoom in, it is quite dirty and has an onion ring appearance. Usually, when you have this textured kind of bokeh, the backgrounds in your photos can start to look very busy, which is distracting. But I find it interesting that in my portraits, the background still looks quite smooth. This could just be down to the location we were shooting on, or maybe because it was quite cloudy on the day, but I'm really happy with how my photos turned out. The bokeh does a good job at staying relatively round even as you step down your aperture. The more you step it down, the more obvious the texture becomes. The bokeh is also rounder in the center of the frame and turns into more of a cat-eye shape towards the edges. You have a minimum focus distance of 19cm on the wide end and 39cm on the long end.
It's like so overgrown. I love like that overgrown look.
This lens has a variety of lens flares, so let's take a look at them. Depending how you angle yourself to the sun, some of the flaring is very soft and has no defined patterns or edges, so you can definitely use these to add a creative flair to your photos. Other times, this lens can produce very prominent flaring with lots of ghosting and a greenish yellow color to it. It does have a very good handle on chromatic aberration. I wasn't able to find any in my photos from the photo shoot or the lens flare test. You have to really hunt to find CA. I actually went back to the photos I took with the E-Mount version because we had more light during those tests and there is only the tiniest amount of fringing here. This is such a small amount that it can be managed very easily in editing if it ever pops up for you.
Get like a bit more light on your face. Yeah.
With the build, this is where there are some differences between each of the mounts. The Z mount weighs 540 grams, so overall this 17-70 is a good weight and fairly small in size for the large focal range you're getting. This lens has external zoom and features a zoom ring and a customizable ring. It has a USB-C port, built-in vibration compensation, a 67mm filter thread, and is weather sealed. It also comes with a pedal-shaped lens hood. Depending on which mount you're getting will depend on what buttons you have on the lens. The Z mount, E and F mount versions have no buttons, so only the Canon RF version does have an AF to MF switch and a VC on and off switch. Let's jump to a different day to check out the autofocus performance of this lens and what it looks like for video. Again, these video tests are on the Nikon Z8 and I'm making use of People AF with continuous autofocus on auto area AF, which means, as I do with all my reviews, I let the camera and lens do all the work so you can get a better idea of what it would be like using it for yourself. The 17-70 makes use of a stepping motor for autofocus, and I have to say it's quite fast and snappy. While we're testing the speed, I noticed that sometimes the focus sort of jolts rather than being smooth, but it does do a great job at being able to find me in the frame each time on both the wide and long end. It's also good at keeping focus on a moving subject in the frame with Dan and I running around. In terms of video image quality, it's not razor sharp, but sharp enough to see the main details in the frame. I really love the separation in the 70mm shots especially. Even here, where we have a lot more bokeh than we did during the photo shoot, in my opinion, the background still looks smooth and doesn't have a busy look in spite of the bokeh texture. A couple of things to think about if you are planning on using this lens mostly for video is that there is no AF to MF switch on all the mounts except the Canon version, which means you'd have to go into your camera's menu system to change it or set it to a custom button on your camera body. I know a lot of videographers who like to switch between auto and manual focus in the middle of recording shots, so I did want to point that out. If you're a gimbal user, this lens's physical length while zooming changes the center of gravity too, so depending on what kind of gimbal you're using, you might need to rebalance it when you want to change your focal length. It does not stay focused while zooming, however, it does have very minimal focus breathing across the entire zoom range.
Maybe we can sit with these wispy bits. And I'm gonna sit down and be comfy again. We've come up here because there's a lot more light because I want to shoot some at base ISO. My shutter speed is at 1/160, which is a bit slow, so I'm only gonna do a couple, but just so we have some of these images.
Let's take a look at some comparisons of APS-C zoom lenses for each mount, starting with Sony. The only lenses in a similar price range are the Sigma 18-50 f2.8, which doesn't quite get you as much reach, and the Sigma 17-40 f1.8, which has a tempting faster aperture, but again, not as much reach. Then you have the Sony 16-55 f2.8G, but that's at a much higher price point. Nikon have less options to compare to. The only real option is the DX 16-50 f2.8. Otherwise, the other lenses in a similar focal range have variable apertures of f3.5 to 6.3. Canon have even less options in this focal range. The most similar one to compare to is the RFS 18-150 f3.5 to 6.3, but that's a much slower aperture than the Tamron. Canon also have the same two Sigmas that are available for Sony. Fujifilm, unsurprisingly, have the most options to compare to, including the XF 16-55 f2.8, which again doesn't get you quite as much reach, and XF 18-135 f3.5 to 5.6, which has a slower and variable aperture. There's also the same Sigmas yet again as we had for Sony and Canon.
So I'm going to take a photo at each of the main focal lengths of this lens while we're standing in the same spot so you can see the entire focal range. So first we have 17 mils, and then we have 24, 35, 50, and finally 70. And now I'm going to do that again, but this time I'm going to move around and frame each shot to look the same, and I'm going to start on 70. So now we're going to start on 70 mils, and then we'll go into 50, and then we have 35, 24, and 17.
So this Tamron 17-70mm f2.8 sits in a really great spot for APS-C users and fills in a gap that's needed in almost all the mounts. Overall, I think considering the price point and range this lens offers, it's a really good balance between cost and performance and is a great do-it-all option for APS-C users for both photo and video.